So we're going to start out with psoas release. So I'm standing on the block on one leg and the other leg is free. And this is going to help release tension in our psoas muscle, which is a big muscle that joins the upper body and the lower body. And when it is tight, we can experience a tucked pelvis. We could experience a thrust forward rib cage, flat in our low back, all of which are not necessarily optimal in terms of pelvic floor function. So we're going to stand on one leg and all we're going to do is just let this leg hang free. And we're just going to we're just kind of swinging it. And we don't want to have any tension. We're not hiking it up. You just want to have a gentle, low flow swing. Just to kind of let some length go in there. And in a moment, we're going to do an activation in a similar position, well, in the exact same position, but it will be working on the standing leg. So right now, this leg is actually working a little bit by holding us here in balance, and we're just letting this one go free. So now we're going to go on to the other side and do that same thing. Excuse my cat who's decided to clean himself right now. Okay, so now we are just letting that leg swing, just nice and slow and gentle. And we want to try to keep the pelvis fairly stable here, in the same level is the word I'm looking for. We don't want it to drop down. We're going to be doing that in the next exercise. So our hips are going to be level here, and we're just allowing that leg to swing nice and easy. So not meant to, there is a little bit of work happening on this leg, but we're not adding any core breath. We're not adding any activation of the pelvic floor here. We're just allowing this leg to have a little bit of free length to get some motion in there. Okay, so now we're going to switch back over to that first leg, same position, standing on one leg, but now we are going to work on activating the lateral hip muscles here in this standing leg. And this time we do want this pelvis, so we don't want to keep the two hip bones here level. We want that one to drop down. And then in order to bring it back up so that our pelvis is level again, rather than using this part of the body to hike it up, we're going to use these muscles to press down into the block to bring the hip, this side of the hip, back up. So we think about pressing this foot into the block and then we release. Press that foot into the block and release. This is working on our balance here as well. Press and release. Press. Okay, we'll do 4 more here and then we're going to switch over to the other side. So this is called the pelvic list. And when we have stronger lateral hip muscles, it helps with our gait. So it helps us walk. It will prevent us from becoming kind of shufflers as we get a little bit older. It will help with squats, lunges, all sorts of things. And it's also indirectly, so even though I'm not adding in any pelvic floor activation here, so I'm dropping that down now, pressing through the standing leg. Even though I'm not adding any Kegels here or any pelvic floor activation, the pelvic floor is still working as part of that core control or stabilization process. And you'll probably, by the end of these, this is a real burner, a real booty burner. I quite like this exercise. I'll often do it if I'm just standing around waiting, say at the side of a street, or sometimes I'm waiting by a soccer field, and if I find a curb or a cement block, I'll just do a few of these, pass the time. People might look at you a little strange, but who cares? And let's do one more. Okay, now we are going to continue to use the block. We're going to do a little bit more active movement here. We're going to come down into a squat, and it's going to be a little bit, obviously it's staggered because I have one leg higher than the other, so I'm really sticking my bum back. And then as I stand up, I'm going to lift my leg out to the side. So it's kind of coming out into a star shape, down into a squat, up into a star shape. Now, if you want to add the core breath here, so if you want to add your pelvic floor activation, you're going to inhale down. So you're thinking of lengthening the pelvic floor, blossoming your vulva. Now we're going to exhale, gather the pelvic floor as you press up into your star. So you're working on balance, control, core control. We've got the pelvic floor activated in here as well. We're getting some glutes. We're getting some quads. We're kind of getting a whole bunch of things here. We're even getting a little bit into our upper body because we're moving our arms. Your heart rate's going to get up a little bit. And of course, you can do this without the core breath. Your choice, you can add or just allow your pelvic floor to respond as it needs to. Let's do 4 more here. Last 2 and last 1. Now we're going to go over to the other side. And some people, when they have a symptomatic day, so let's go down here. When they have a symptomatic day, especially for prolapse, things like squats or deadlifts may feel unattainable. They might feel something they want to avoid. But a lot of people, myself included, when I do a staggered stance, whether it's staggered with one leg in front of the other or one leg higher than the other, it actually makes it less symptomatic. For me anyway. Let me know in the comments below if this is something that you notice as well. Now, if you wanted to make this a little bit harder, you could put dumbbells in your hands, light weights. You could put weights around your ankles. You could also technically have a band around your legs as well. But make sure you have mastered this level first before going on to something harder. Just because something is harder doesn't mean it's better. Let's do 2 more. We need the core control before we move on. Okay. Now, we're going to keep that heart rate up a little bit. I don't want to disturb my little furry friend here. But now what we're going to do is a rear lunge, and then we're going to press up and bring our knee up. So again, we're challenging that balance as well as the legs, as well as getting our heart rate up. And if we want to add the core breath here, inhale, blossom, exhale, activate. So you're probably feeling it in your legs now. A little bit of a thigh burn. Again, you could add dumbbells in your hands if you like. Make it a little bit harder. You can also do this without the core breath. Just allow your pelvic floor to respond to the movement, respond to the load. Let's go 2 more here, and then we're going to go to the other side. And last one. And switch. Okay, inhale back, exhale up. So it doesn't take, we don't have to have super high impact, high intensity workouts to get our heart rate up, to experience some gentle impact, and to get our muscles working. I'm not saying there's no benefit to high intensity and high impact, but we don't always need it. We can get a nice workout, let's do 2 more here, with slow controlled movement that arguably has more benefit. So slow controlled movement means we are under that load, we experience that load for longer. So the muscles have to work a little bit harder. And as you can tell, I'm out of breath. Okay, so now we're gonna bring the block down. And you have a choice between heights. So you can do this with the tall block, the wide block, or the flat block or flat position. So I'll show you in all of them. My favorite is this, but let's start here. So we're gonna go into a sumo squat position, but we're gonna hold it. We're not gonna move. So you want to lower yourself down, and we should feel your sit bones on the surface of your block. Your feet are pointed out towards the side, your knees as well. You can play around with what position feels good for your feet. And we're gonna use our arms to gently press those legs out to the side, so we're getting a nice stretch on the inner thighs. And you wanna keep your body tall, so you don't wanna collapse. So lengthen your spine, string through the crown of the head. So this is the tall block height. Now you can come down to the medium one. So this is my favorite. You can really feel my sit bones here. And if you have a little bit more flexibility, you can bring it down to the low one. And you choose which you like best. So here I find I can get the nice, my spine feels the best here. I can keep a neutral spine, so I'm looking at myself in the mirror. I have a gentle curve in my low back, so I'm not tucking my pelvis under. And we're just holding this here. And now I want to get some mobility, some length into my thorax, so my upper body. So I'm going to take one hand down in front, and the other arm is going to reach up towards the ceiling. So I'm using this elbow to continue to press that leg out. And then I'm just reaching up with those fingers. And you can look up, you can look at the wall, you can look up at the ceiling, you can look up at your fingers, whatever feels good for you. And make sure you continue breathing here. Don't hold your breath. And now I'm going to switch and do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to plant my left hand down, use that elbow to press out into that leg. Right arm reaches up. Not sure if you can hear my cat purring. He's very happy being here with us in this video. And come on down. Now I'm going to take the block to that flat, low position, and I'm going to bring my legs in front of me. I'll shift over so you can see what I'm doing with my feet. So you could cross your legs, but I like to have one foot in front of the other and sort of come forward to the edge. So again, my sit bones are right on the edge of my block. My vulva is not on the surface of the block, it's off a little bit to the side. And I'm, again, lengthening through my sternum, through that whole spine. Imagine a string through the crown of the head. This may be enough for you here, but we're gonna also add in a little bit of rotation if you can. So take your right hand on the left leg, your left hand behind you, and you're gonna look over your shoulder. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. And now the final position, we're going to come down into a supported bridge. So the bridge is usually a position where we do some pelvic floor activation, and I'll walk you through how to do that. But it's also a position where we can hang out, and especially again on symptomatic days, we might want to kind of be like a cat and just hang out and lay around and not experience gravity in our symptoms, which sometimes mess with our mojo. So it's nice to take breaks throughout the day to help mitigate the symptoms, but also help to relieve them. So you could just be in this position here. You could take the block on the flat position and put it up underneath your bum, underneath your sacrum, and just hang out here. You can play around with the position a little and find where's most comfortable. And then from here, you could do things like drawing in your knee. You could come into a version of happy baby pose. You could have both legs drawn in. You can also do this without the block. But the block underneath our pelvis, even if we just stay here, it just puts us in a gentle inversion, and it's kind of helping relieve some of the heaviness and the dragginess that can happen with prolapse. If you feel like you want a little bit more, you can turn it up onto the side and hang out here. Once you get up into these positions, I wouldn't recommend doing like the double leg happy baby here. I usually reserve that just because the block gets a little bit less stable. So this is more for just hanging out in this position. And if you want a little bit more inversion, but also a little bit more kind of release into your back, then you can turn it up onto the highest one and then hang out here. So you're going to feel this into your low back. It's going to stretch out in the front of those hips again. So what we were releasing in the beginning of this routine. And you choose, again, which one feels best for you. So I like this for a little bit of time. I can't stay here for very long. So I'm going to come back down to the mid position. And here I could stay for quite some time. So you might want to turn on a little bit of yoga music. You might want to listen to a podcast. I wouldn't invite you to stay here for the entire afternoon, but 10 minutes or so, 5 to 10 minutes, somewhere in there will be a nice break and a nice bit of relief for you. And then you're done. So we had some activation of the pelvic floor. We had some work of the surrounding muscles. We had some release of tension in and around the body. We also challenged our balance. So thanks very much for working out with me and Mr. Ed today. We'll see you next time.